All right.
Good evening, Mayor.
Hey, Ty, how are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
Life is good. So tired, long week.
Oh, I bet. All the COVID and everything. I see the numbers in the paper. I know you got to have a long job. I mean, it's got to be tiring.
Well, that and this will be my third after hours meeting this week. So
Oh, wow.
I'm ready to.
Get a break.
I'm not complaining. I knew what I was getting into. So but, we had a real good discussion last night in the equity and inclusion with civil service came in and talked to us.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, so that's that committee's moving along very well. So
Good. That's good to hear.
You guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
yes,
Hey, I'll take it this week. All
who are you?
right. I'm the unknown comic. Remember that guy?
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that.
I'll put the bag over my head.
You guys are out. You two are too young to remember Chicken Man. It was on WKBW. We were WKBW radio back in the day. It was the Adventures of Chicken Man. So
I is that what they said? He's everywhere. He's everywhere.
yes, yeah.
Okay. Hey, all right.
Uh, well, we're slowly coming in. So. Everybody doing good? Ty, your family's doing good?
Yes, sir.
Good. Surviving uh, the kids at home. What like a virtual learning.
Yep. My daughters actually like it better.
Mhm.
My one daughter, she's like my oldest, so she's real smart, and she don't like. She says for her it's better because she don't have to listen to any people that don't want to learn, that wants to mess around and stuff. She don't have to worry about none of that. She just
Oh,
gets to
yeah, yeah,
focus.
yeah. It's my wife is helping out with our youngest daughter's three littler ones, and two are doing very well, and one Liam he needs to stay focused, so he's better off in a classroom because there's just too many distractions in our house. So
Right.
yeah, but it's a learning curve, and they're asking grandma math questions, and we know how to do it the old way, and
Mm,
which is a lot easier, I think, than this new math. But
this ain't how my teachers tells me to do it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, we had to learn times tables all the way up to 12 times 12, and they're doing. I don't know. They're learning things different now. I
Yeah.
guess you put down. Well, I guess it may be about this much, and then this much, and then this much, and uh, it's amazing. So,
Yeah, my oldest made the dean's list at UB, so I
oh,
couldn't be
that's great.
happier. Yeah,
That's great. What's your
thank
field?
you.
What
Uh,
field?
health. What's it called? She was in biotech and she transferred to public health.
Oh, okay. Hmm. Our son went there. He went to UB many years ago, and education courses.
Oh,
He got his master's from Canisius in education, and went down south, Virginia, taught for a year down there, didn't like it, and ended up in law enforcement. So he's a federal agent now. He works for Homeland Security up out of the Buffalo office.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's probably a sweet job.
yeah, yeah. he was in the, he's been in several different, he was in like the counterfeit unit for these knockoffs and that stuff that, they got, they work him around in different divisions. So
Oh, sweet.
that's my favorite son. There's Vernon.
How you doing, Mayor? How you doing, Kevin?
Wonderful. How you doing?
Hi, how's it going?
Good evening, sir.
Mayor, we going back on, I see we're skipping some. Are we going back to those or?
I thought what we would do is ask if anybody had any additional comments on them or wanted to review them, and then we would kind of, continue to go forward. This data technology and transparency can be quite involved.
Okay.
So I think that's, but I thought we'd go back and that's why I put them in red on the email so that everybody can see and that's what make sure I've got it correct, and we can talk, if we need to talk about them more, we can do that. So
Okay.
kind of a review and then move forward.
Yep.
Vernon, since I got you on here, my audio was off last week. You asked about the TCI.
Mhm.
I did look it up.
Okay.
And I mean, it sounds sound, but I don't think that's something that we can just adopt whole cloth without, DCJS approval.
Yep.
But I did look it up, and for what I saw, what it was,
Mhm.
I think it's good, but I don't know how easily or how well that would translate to us. And I don't think that we could teach strictly that. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. I was just curious because Cat County is utilizing it. So, and that's why I was figured that it was something that we could
The
implement.
Kent County Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll check with Ken Rice.
Okay.
I believe he's still their training officer. I'll get a hold of him and see how they incorporate it.
Okay.
Let's see, Barry, you there?
Yes, sir. How you doing tonight?
Good, thank you. Karen?
Everybody.
you got it?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. And
Hey, Vernon, thanks for the notes again.
Yep.
What's that?
No
You're a
problem.
rock star.
Yeah.
Danny McGraw, you there? Okay, you got a thumbs up from him.
Feeling better, Chief?
I am feeling better, thank you.
Good to hear.
It could have been worse. I got lucky. It's kind of like a mild case of the flu.
Yeah, it's scary though. Hopefully everything works out.
It was scary. That's what I was worried about, waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to breathe,
Right.
So thank you.
Especially since you're not a young buck anymore.
I'm not. I think you still have me by a couple years though.
I do.
The young buck doesn't matter. We just lost a 40-year-old.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. It came out yesterday in the Cattaraugus County Health Department. I haven't heard a name or anything. I checked the obituaries, but it's not in yet. But 40, I mean,
Wow.
geez.
That's-
I've been
that's
trying to
young.
get a vaccine. No luck.
Yeah, it is very scary.
Let's see, who's joined us? We got Darren, we got you tonight, right?
Daryl, thank you for the notes, the stats.
Oh, my pleasure. My investigator puts that together. Thanks.
It's good to have people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Daryl, I really appreciate those notes.
Oh,
They were
good.
spot on.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. Well, excellent. I'm good.
Hi, Daryl, how are you?
Good, thanks, Mayor. How are you?
Kenny, how you doing?
Fine, just fine.
Kevin? We
Hey,
got
Bill.
you? Okay. And Darren, can you hear us?
Yep. How you doing?
Good, okay. We got Kim, how you doing?
Doing great, Mayor. How are you?
I'm doing good. So we got Mickey, how you doing?
Evening, everybody. Doing well.
Good evening.
Hey Mickey, I'm still waiting to hear from the IT guys here. They're trying to set up a program to get us those statistics you're looking for.
Okay, very good. And thank you, Daryl. That was Very clutch. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Daryl, you gonna make that meeting tonight?
No, I'm not going to be at that one. Apologies.
It's a cluster tonight. There's another meeting at 7. There's my 13-year-old's birthday's today.
Wow. Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, she and then there's a release of a movie that me and her want to watch, and it's like premiering tonight at 7. And I was like, wow, listen, you're gonna have to watch it without me. Got another meeting I can't go to. I got this, it's yeah.
Okay. All right, we're still waiting on a couple of people, but we can, we'll get going here in just one more minute. Let's give one more minute and then we'll get going. So I thought what we would do first is recap. I sent out an email earlier with, it's got some of the points that we've been covering, and I put in red to you guys what I thought we added to or discussed last week on these issues, and then added some of the issues that we also discussed there. So we can start out by looking at that and seeing if we have anything else to discuss in that group. And then I thought after that, we'd move on to data technology and transparency. This can be quite involved. So it's on page 71 in that manual, and we can move forward there. I think that'll be a lot of good conversation there. Last week was very good. I got to tell everybody that was very impressive. I thought everybody had some lot of good points, and moving forward, we'll keep this moving forward. I will tell you something that I think is not comical, but I had a mayor in a neighboring community that I know call me and say, have you done anything yet with that police reform? And I says, yeah, we're about 4 weeks into it meeting. And he says, oh, we haven't even done anything yet. So I said, well, you better get going. So we are ahead of one person. So. And I don't know if you heard the governor's message. The governor spoke 4 different times, and Salamanca is the first community to get their plan into the governor's office. So he gave them credit for that. Okay, we got. Well, let's get going, and then if other ones join in, I'll admit them in, and we'll get them caught up, or they can go in with it. So so far, we talked about maintaining a strong presence with SRO program in the schools, but added a better defined role of the SROs. Reestablishing a strong community policing program within the communities. I think that was, I think everybody was in favor of that, and getting back to several of our officers weighed in on that and talked about how community policing used to be, and it would be nice to get that, get it back to the same type of thing going on in our community. Neighborhood watch was real strong at one time, and we tried to make a comeback on that, and there wasn't a lot of there hasn't been really a lot of interest. I know Kelly Andriano tried to get that back up and running. She's had a couple of groups going. They do still meet. There's one of the let's see, Panis is taking that over. So they're still meeting, but it's not what it used to be. And it would be great to get it back to to what it used to be. Better training for police officers. We talked a lot about that, and accreditation. We talked about doing that. And one of the things that came up with the accreditation was a concern for cost. And I've had a conversation with Chief Richardson, and you know, I personally don't think it's going to be an enormous cost. I think we can do it. It's going to be, the cost is going to come in man hours to do it. And I think we have the personnel that can get that going. So we're going to talk more on that internally. And we have Dr. Watkins joining us. So the next thing on here is recruiting better police candidates by offering property tax exemptions. I think originally we talked about, or it was recommended 15% in property tax exemption. And then JR mentioned that that wasn't very much. So I think, I don't believe we settled on any percentage. It was to be looked at and talked about more. Am I correct in that statement? Okay, I get some head shaking there. Good. Recruiting better police adding a counselor, social worker to the police department, full or part-time. I think most of us are in favor of that, or reaching out with a shared type service, or better communications between existing services and getting working with them. So we'll keep that on our plan. Looking at increasing the police salary pay to be more competitive. This is an item that we have been taking a hard look at, and we've got negotiations coming up with the police department here. And also I got the negotiations going to be starting with the police and fire department. So this will be talked about there, and we can take a look at that and become more competitive in our pay, and maybe that'll help us with our recruitment. Idea for civilian review board that was introduced and discussed, and I believe this is going to need a lot more discussion, so we can keep this on here and continue to discuss that. And we can reach out to the community, and you know, this could be in our plan basically, and we can have more discussion on it as we move along. So cultural awareness training was discussed, and I think we need to get more training in the cultural awareness, along with this is kind of coinciding with the other committee that is going right now, the Equity and Inclusion Committee. And that they're talking about a lot of things talked in that committee about what we need as policies and things in the city. So this is kind of going to go hand in hand. The same way as last night we held the Equity and Inclusion meeting, and we had civil service come in, and they did a presentation on the whole civil service process and all that. So that committee got a good flavor on what civil service is and that. So we're going to have some overlap in some of the things we're doing. I think what this committee's doing and what that committee's doing, there is going to be a little bit of an overlap. Sponsoring program was discussed, where students, candidates could be sponsored to attend police academy. That's a good suggestion. We'll have to, I think we'll that'll all stay on. And for anybody has further comments or anything on that, they can jump right in. We had a brief discussion on civilian police academy. One of the ideas was that would be a good thing to have if we, I'm just looking, to go along with the police review board, that each member of that would have to go through the police academy. That was some thoughts there. And then the police or the explorers program. And I put down additional discussion as needed on this. I think we touched on it And we're going to look into that a little bit more. So that's a kind of a brief update on what we've been doing. So any comments or questions or concerns about what we've been doing so far?
Can you explain to me a little bit further, Mayor, what the role of a civilian review board would be?
That's a topic in itself right there. And
Okay.
we talked about in a lot of agencies, especially larger agencies, they have a civilian review board that reviews complaints against police officers. And they would take a look at those and make recommendations. Some have subpoena power, some have authorization or powers to initiate punishments and different things like that. So it's one of the recommendations is that that a board is formed like that can take a look at any complaint that is filed by a civilian against a police officer, so they'd have a view from the civilian's point of view on what's going on there. But in creating those boards, you have to have people who have an idea of how the police are trained, how they work, and that. So that's why a civilian police academy is like the city of Albany. They have to go through the civilian police academy. Anyone that's on that board. So it's a topic in itself, and last week we had a lot of good conversation on it. So, and I think that'll stay as part of the conversation as we move forward. Anybody else want to weigh in on that? Okay. That's a brief answer, Kim. We'll try to come up with some more information on the police review boards and from different communities and try to get that out to everybody as we move forward here.
Thank you, Mayor.
So, okay. So moving on to everybody good with that? Ready to move on?
The only thing I'd like to comment, Bill, on was the hiring of a social worker to be in the police department. I think from our discussions, a lot of it was it's not really the role of a social worker to be in police encounters. So, I mean, if we could do more of a shared service rather than have a full-time person that may not be as utilized in the police department. I mean, if we were a bigger department, things like that, it would probably be more of a utilized role. But you know, it's one of those, I don't see that coming into account every day. Maybe once a month you'd need somebody like that. And I think that really wouldn't constitute a full-time role when we could, when the money would be better spent with, incentivizing newer recruits, especially because we're lacking, we're down, 2 positions right now, soon to be 3 or 4. So.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Anybody else? Go ahead, Mickey.
I'd just like to ask Mike and the chief, what do you guys think about a social worker? It would seem that you could start utilizing them right away.
Chief?
Unmute yourself.
There we go. So one of my concerns with a social worker is if we have a situation, that's someone else that we're responsible for. Now, once we put them, if we have a violent person and then we bring in a social worker, that would be one of my concerns. I don't know how you feel, Mike.
I agree. I mean, there are mechanisms in place to bring in social workers after the fact when it's necessary. At the time during a violent encounter, that's not the time for a social worker. After the fact, they can come in when the situation's calmed down and they can be referred to the social worker, but bring them into a violent situation or potentially violent situation, I personally think is a mistake.
In other areas where they've employed these strategies and have a greater team of social workers working alongside officers, it's typically delegated through a 311 or 911 style system that says, okay, these are non-violent issues, these are violent issues, and yes, situation can change. But in the workbook, there's a situation or an example given, if you will, that shows that it actually helps to route the calls a lot better, and that calls actually went down because the appropriate response was given, and it just sort of helped kept rolling things along. And the social worker, the crisis intervention team, got to be very busy during that time.
Aaron?
To have a social worker on staff 24/7, I don't think it's financially responsible.
Okay, Darren wants to weigh in. Darren, go ahead. You have to take yourself off mute. Darren, you're still muted. Can you take your, there you go.
You can't, can you hear me?
You there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that I agree with Mike and Ron that, it's a big financial burden, and also more so in a situation, you have to worry about yourself and the people that you're there to actually, figure out the situation that, you were called there for. And then you have an extra person in the way that you have to now account for. It's more of a risk than it is anything else. I think that's why I've been more on the side of providing extra training to the police officers, like maybe 5 or 6 guys that they get continued education in certain areas, maybe like a DRE, somebody in mental illness, and maybe somebody juvenile, somebody domestics, just different areas that guys have training. Sometimes maybe they overlap, but in general, I think it's I agree with those guys that it just provides more of a high stress situation when officers need to try and calm the situation, de-escalate, and in their heads, they have to slow down the situation so that they can respond as efficient as possible.
Can I know that I've spoken on this before when the topics come up, but I just, I think it presents more of a risk to have a social worker actually out in the field with a police officer, because it's one more person that a police officer has to be concerned about rather than focusing on the job that they've been called out to do. But I think a social worker can have a wonderful role in a consulting way in which you can help educate, you can help work. A social worker could talk through sample situations and talk about how to recognize certain forms of mental illness. I think there's a lot that can be done and a lot of value in having a social worker who works with the police department on a consulting basis. But to have a social worker on 24/7 and going out in situations with a police officer, I think that probably isn't the best use of the financial resources of the police department. And I also think that it could present with a risky situation. So, I know I weighed in on this once before, but I really do believe that. That's just my opinion.
Barry's got his hand up.
I just want to echo kind of what Chief Richardson, Captain Marsfelder, and Darren and Kim and it all said here. I've been asking around because at first blush, I think it kind of sounds good to have a social worker ready to go on calls and things like that, especially in things that might be, from what people have told me, if we could have a social worker that goes with potential domestic disputes and things like that, it all sounds good. And I think it looks good initially at first glance, but knowing how quickly things can go south and go sideways where it turns into a violent situation, I think the city is really kind of setting itself up for a liability issue if we were to have something going, somebody go out on calls. certainly a consulting format. I think with Darren, whoever else had mentioned it in the past, potentially having some officers that have some additional training in those areas would certainly make sense. And I'm all for additional funding for training in all areas of police officers, especially in a small department like ours, where our guys are expected to do so many things and wear so many different hats. More training would certainly be better, but like I said, at first blush, it sounds good for social workers being available, but just the liability and officers having the added responsibility of having somebody else they've got to watch out for besides themselves and any other officers. It's just, I think we're asking for more issues if they're actually on calls.
Dr. Watkins, did you have your hand up?
I didn't. I think the last time we were on the call, I think we talked about this prior or before, and I guess everyone had weighed in on their opinion as to whether or not it was a plus or minus for the department to have a social worker. We have found them to be very beneficial and different occasions. A mental health crisis, a social worker can be quite beneficial to a police officer who's not had training in mental health crises. And if they have that, if a social worker has that background under their belt, I think that's an asset to the police department. But oftentimes you have occasion where there are those who are homeless, those who are on drugs, that you may have to run across, and you may need a social worker to assist in those areas. I don't know if a 24-hour social worker is necessary, but one that can be on call to assist when those situations do come about for the police force.
I share Dr. Watkins' perspective, and I agree. And perhaps short of 24 hours, a shared services solution is available. I like the idea of consulting. The 311 situations that are outlined are totally appropriate places to dispatch a social worker, and there are certainly times where that would be advantageous to have that resource available. So hopefully there's a cost-effective balance that can be reached so that this is available, and at the same time you're not putting having to guard another person in a violent situation. We wouldn't want that.
A question for Mike and Ron. Don't we have that now? We can have numbers to call if we need help in that way.
I'm not sure exactly what type of call you're looking at. I mean, if we needed a social worker in the middle of the night, we would call the county and see who they had on call. So yeah, right now, I mean, we could call the county, and they usually have somebody that would get a hold of us, someone on call.
Okay. Okay, Ty, go ahead.
I just wanted to pretty much echo what the doctor said. I was going to say, you know, people smarter than us have already studied this and said that it does make a difference. And I don't know, maybe like Mr. Marshfield and the chief was saying, maybe not a social worker, maybe it's something else that we should be looking at. I don't know what that would be besides the social worker, and if we can't find money to put that social worker on part-time or full-time, whatever it may be, then how are we going to get money for training these officers? That's all.
I'm just wondering kind of what type of call are you guys looking at to send a social worker on?
So Mickey was stating that it would be like a 311 call, like, so those would be non-violence calls. So, you know, you guys get called to somebody sleeping down there in the park. Yep. They don't have a house. Where you know, where are they supposed to go? Like, what happens to them? You know, a lot of times when officers approach somebody with mental health, their emotions go crazy. They already feel that that person is trying to attack them or hurt them or whatever it may be. And so a social worker a lot of times is more prepared to be able to discuss, talk to that person, talk them down, and handle that situation.
Kevin?
Yeah, I guess I would like some clarification on what a social worker's job is, because like I have my idea from what, what Hollywood tells me, what I've seen in practice with different people that work for the county and other areas in our local community. And I've just, a lot of what we want to send social workers on, I kind of get this vibe that it's like almost like it's a less paid hostage negotiator. And I feel like and I don't think a social worker is really, a hostage negotiator yet. I don't, they're not a clinical psychologist. I mean, some of them might be, but I mean, social workers just seems like a very broad term that, I mean, I'm sure clinical psychologists can also be social workers, but I guess if I had some clarification from you guys on what everyone's definition of a social worker is, I think we can get a little bit further on what we're expecting this person to do, besides work miracles.
Well, if I can just jump in, Mayor, you can get a licensed clinical social worker who can assist in various tasks, from mental health on down to assisting someone who's homeless. So a licensed clinical social worker would be someone that you would be looking to bring on board. And this individual can help to talk down someone who might have a mental health crisis versus having to have your police force having to be a little aggressive with them because you're just not sure as to how to handle one of these type of crises. So I think if we would look at something along that line, you would probably be able to have a very diverse force there with someone with that clinical background.
I think you guys would probably be surprised how well our officers handle. We deal with mental health patients all the time. And I think we do a good job.
I'm just writing some notes.
So I guess to follow up on my question that Dr. Watkins responded to, which was, I guess, I mean, if we have additional, I mean, if there was a question that something was going wrong with our police department in this regard, I mean, additional training for like de-escalation or, mental health awareness or something like that, I think would kind of get lumped into that category, and then continuing to use the shared services after an incident happens where we have to do a follow-up or something like that, I think would kind of in the direction we're going and just strengthen some of the tools we use.
Okay, we've had a lot of good, Mickey wanted to weigh in again. We've had a lot of discussion on this. I'd actually like to move forward. But go ahead, Mickey, make your point.
Sure. Just to finalize, I agree with Daryl and Dr. Watkins, Ty, that the services provided by these individuals who are experts in their field, and to answer your question, Kevin, I think the best way I could summarize them, other than being experts in social and psychological spheres, are also experts in patients. So you're kind of onto something with that negotiator thing. But other than that, I would just ask that Mr. Mayor, if you could see what the county is able to do. I know that they had a 2-point-something million surplus after their budget. So I don't know if there's, already a system set up, like you mentioned, there's on-call people and whatnot, if there's something to build upon or work with, if for example, decide to go with it, but there's not room or space for a full-timer or whatever. And that's all.
Can I just say one more thing, Mayor, please?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, first of all, I am a licensed clinical social worker. I kept my license even when I went into ordained ministry, and I worked for 25 years as a licensed clinical social worker before I went to seminary and, changed to becoming a pastor of a church. For 11 years, one of my roles was doing assessments in the emergency rooms, a lot of times when police officers would bring people in who had mental health issues. And most of the time, the work that I did was work that I did after police or someone else de-escalated a situation, and I helped in assessment and evaluation. There is clearly a role that social workers can play in the field, you know, in terms of assisting and working together with law enforcement to best help assess situations and respond to helping people in the best way. But never, ever, ever was I ever asked to go out into a situation where it was unknown. Police responded. And then what happened is I was always called in afterwards to do assessments and evaluations and to help give recommendations. So again, I think there is a very real, helpful, and valuable role for a social worker being on call or being a consultant. But I just never remember a situation where I ever felt totally and completely prepared in my education, my training, my experience to go out with a police officer into a situation that was unknown and that could escalate into something very dangerous. It happened from time to time. I know because I saw the people afterwards, but I just, again, I don't know that social workers are really as prepared, educated, and trained to go out in this situation the same way that police officers are. It's my opinion, and you know, maybe I'm wrong, but that's, you know, that's my experience in doing this. So that's all.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. A lot of good conversation there, but let's move on with the data, technology, and transparency. Transparency is one of the 4 pillars of procedural justice and is critical to ensuring accountability. Without a full picture of law enforcement policies, procedures, and activities, the public cannot meaningfully evaluate the performance of law enforcement. Even a well-functioning department risks losing public confidence when it does not engage in meaningful transparency. Departments should consider various ways to make law enforcement practices more transparent to the public. So I think that's there's some questions in there, and I'm not going to read everything. That's just kind of get things rolling here. But we can look at what police incidents should and complaint data should be collected. What data should be available to the public? So, and then to follow up on that, how should your law enforcement agency leverage data to drive policy strategies? So let's get a conversation going on what you feel the data that should be collected, and then we'll move from there. So, anybody have any thoughts on that? Well, to back up just a second, Mike, could you give us, Mike Marshfelder, could you give us a rundown on what is collected? Let's say on an incident report, what data is collected, and then on an arrest report. And I'm talking about like pedigree and things like that. So can you just give everybody a rundown right now?
Sure, Mayor. For a case report or an arrest report, the arrest report will have a little bit more detail on the pedigree information, just out of necessity. If we respond to a call, we're either going to do a blotter event, or for the more serious, we're going to do a case report for more serious incidents. And in the case report, they'll have the location. It will have a basic summary of what we were called there for, what happened while we were there. If it's a domestic incident, there's an entire separate form that needs to be filled out for that as well. And the pedigree information would be name, date of birth, gender, racial background, racial information, I'm sorry, contact information. All this would be recorded in the report. Now, on an arrest, there will be more, obviously. Social security number, tattoos, hair color, eye color, height, weight, contact information. Again, things like that we have to enter. I may have missed something.
Yeah, I know. I know. I put you on.
I think I hit most of the bases.
Yeah. What we can do is we can send out a copy of like a case report. We'll send out a blank one. We'll send out an arrest report, and we're also interested in the domestic violence report. that's a state form that has to be filled out and sent into the state along with other agencies. So we can send, we'll get copies of those. We'll send them out so you have an idea of what you're looking at. But okay, so let's get the conversation going. So what, in the city of Olean, what data do you feel we should be collecting from a police perspective?
I think anything that would be related to disparities in arrests. As Daryl's office report shows, there are some inconsistencies, as we would expect at this point. So anything that helps to reduce disparities in arrests or track them or whatnot.
What do you mean? I'm not following what you mean, Mickey.
Racial disparities in arrests. So, for example, you after review and analysis, you have an opportunity to zero in and look at, what types of offenses and what the outcomes were for the cases. And you can sort of chime in on that and see what is causing the disproportionate arrest rate. Why are blacks and natives being arrested and their bails are higher and everything else compared to whites? And that'll allow you to look at those whys and come out with a better solution that can help to address it. So any data that has anything to do with the reasons why this may be happening would be good to have.
So everyone here knows, he mentioned bail. With the Bail Reform Act, we don't have control over bail. That the police, we don't have control over that. That has absolutely nothing to do with us.
Vern, you wanted to weigh in. Vernon?
I just wanted to expand on what Mickey was saying. I think the information that Daryl provided us provides a lot of information that we should be looking at to collect and maybe make available, readily available. I know the governor came out with the STAT Act, and I don't know if Olean is following that yet, but as far as these statistics that were gathered from Cat County, I mean, they pretty much break it up from perspective of what was the bail amounts and that sort, and broke it down by ethnicity. So I guess for Olean's sake, I guess maybe we could do something where we could figure out, it'd be a bit simple Excel document or database that could be made where you could illustrate the people that were arrested for misdemeanors versus domestic violence, fights, drunk driving, things of that sort. You're not giving names or anything, but you're giving just the demographic information, just more or less race, age group. I can't even think of anything else right now. But those are the types of things that I guess that the general population would be looking for, that would be easy to track, easy to create a document for. As the information is put in, it can automatically switch right over to a database. If someone requested it, it's just a matter of a click, and that stuff will be readily easy to come up with.
Okay, I got some hands up. Hang on a second. Daryl, as that report, that includes Olean, right?
It does include Olean. I would caution against drawing any conclusions based on the statistics. You would want to control different variables, and you would want to calculate in what was the individual's charge in the situation. Remember, these do not include police interactions that don't result in arrest or vehicle and traffic matters. And our offices strive to work with St. Bonaventure, with statisticians who can take that data, collate it, and draw really effective conclusions. But I think in the interest of transparency, it's an interesting document that's accurate of the arrests. All of them are unique, but I do caution, I'm not a statistician. These are just the straight statistics as they are, and you would want to control variables. And I think my investigator, who holds a PhD, also was very cautious in outlining that caveat. So it's useful information, and I think it's the kind of information we would want to collate from the Olean Police Department. And then we would want to send it to statisticians who can really break it down and come up with some really helpful, strategies.
Okay, Kevin has had his hand up. Kevin Doherty, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just I was actually gonna now echo what Daryl had said, which is, I mean, you can say, hey, these people that live in this area are more susceptible to cancer, but that is not a drawn conclusion based if you start picking out race and things like that. I mean, what are the charges? Hey, the bail amounts were this much higher, and all these charges matched what the bail amounts were. And all the people in this large bail amount category also happen to be Native or African American. And so that, I mean, like, it does not usually create causality, right? So I wanted to point that out, and Daryl did a great job pointing that out as well. So.
Okay, I think I'm gonna, Karen, she wanted to, go ahead, Karen.
I just want to caution, we already do a lot of gathering of data. I mean, I think we do annual reports and things like that to the state. So when you talk about transparency, one of my biggest disappointments is the City of Olean website. It's not interactive enough. It's probably not informative enough in a lot of areas. You see a lot of all kinds of questions. Can we take this data that we already probably draw from somewhere, traffic violations, whatever those 4 to 6 categories you think would be needed, or whatever, report to New York State. I'm sure they have an annual or monthly item that they do. Why couldn't you just post them on a page? This is January's call list. We had 792 calls, 58 of them were domestic, incidents, 172 were traffic citations. I don't know if you have to go real deep, but as far as community safety and community awareness, people want to know that they're comfortable in their city and that they feel safe. And you look at a lot of the data, we are much lower, I'm sure, than many other places. When you start looking at getting people to move in and the rates of high crime and murders and some of the real serious ones, we are relatively low. And that could really attract a lot of, businesses and people moving into the city. I'm not trying to hide anything, but I certainly do not want to create more work when it's already being done. So whether that's extracting some of the information pertinent to Olean from the county, or things that we already do, for a state report. I just don't want to see drawing more or doing more work than what's really actually necessary.
Okay, I think Dan McGraw, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. And one thing I just want to point out is, so these numbers are based on the residents of Cattaraugus County. So with all these arraignments and all these charges, are all these people residents of Cattaraugus County, or are they people brought in from Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and stuff like that? So I don't know whether these numbers indicate that, or do they just indicate based on we arrested 500 white males and 50 black males? Where do these white males live? Where do these black males live?
So the statistics, I mean, they include people who live in our county and who do not live in our county. And that actually is one of the fields that we do include in terms of our arraignment, because obviously if you're connected to the community and you're making a bail application, then there's a greater likelihood that you're connected to the community, you're going to return for your next court date than if you have absolutely no connection to the community. But these are complicated statistics, and you want a statistician to really go through it and examine it and have controlled variables before you draw any conclusions. It's just useful to have the information. So I promise to get that information.
Mike?
Karen, every month I put together for the chief, now it'll be Chief Richardson, the monthly statistics as far as arrests for calls for service, domestic incidents, accident reports, vehicle and traffic, misdemeanors, felonies, violations, city ordinance, all that stuff. We do that every month. So-
Now, do you have anything like on the Cleary Act that you have to, I mean, the Cleary Act is big on the college campuses as far as sexual assaults and things along that lines. Like I said, I'm sure the state's got plenty of things they asked for.
That I believe the chief secretary actually takes care of that stuff.
But again, it's not like you couldn't post a monthly report on the internet, you know, on our city website to say, this is what calls we did in January. You know, these are what we did in February. I think it makes people appreciate the amount of calls that you do.
Oh, I
And
think
what
a
you
lot of
really
people would
take
be
care
very
of.
surprised. Yes.
Oh, shocked. Again, they'd say the same thing on the fire department, you know. They'd be amazed at the amount of numbers that really happen. And you guys probably multiply that by 3 or 4 times.
The code
Yeah,
office used to do that on the city
I'm
website.
adding that to our recommendation list, posting the monthly reports website. Is that, and then we can work on what should be, you know, we can always work on what should be in those reports. So, okay, who did I miss that had their hand? I may have missed somebody who wanted to weigh in.
I was just gonna say, when I used to do the monthly reports for our day crew, we would average between 500 and 650 calls, maybe 700 on a busy month. That excluded traffic stops. That's just regular calls that we respond to.
And that's just the day crew.
What about, let's talk about those non-emergency calls. I had a funny thing I came across today on South Berry, and it was a broken front door and a door open. And I meant to call. I didn't call. I thought 911. I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. This is not an emergency. And again, without having to go look up the number, to reach one on a non-emergency is not a common number. We talked about it on one of our first meetings about having a non-emergency call, such as a loose dog or feral cat or open door that shouldn't be. Can we have a number like other than a 911, 0000, or something that people can recognize? You know, 7777 or something that people will know what to call in a non-emergency situation.
So our non-emergency number is 376-5678. But you get an automated, takes about 30 seconds longer than if you call 5677. But the 5678 is pretty easy to remember. And if you have something, you can always, if you have something, it might not be an emergency to someone else, but maybe it is to you. You can call 911 and they're still going to transfer you to us.
Yeah, just something that wouldn't necessarily, again, take a resource away from a serious crime going on, or something that where you were needed. Just check this in the next hour or two, you know, kind of thing.
Yep.
Like a gathering of 10 or more.
So you're basically calling about like a for lack of a better word, a catchy phone number that people could easily remember to call for non-emergencies. Yeah.
And that may just go right into our.
Toledo and Barnes are broke up. Maybe we can grab their number. So.
Well, Rich is still using that number, but
Oh,
I think
okay.
if we had it come into our, we have our people that when the county sends it to us, we have our own people. What do you call them? Intake. They
Dispatcher.
take the phone call. Yes, dispatch. Thank you, Bill, because I couldn't come up with that word. They could determine again whether it's a not emergency, you know, or not.
Well, that's what happens now. If
But
a
if the
911 call comes
number
in,
could
yeah, if a
go
911
directly.
call comes in and the Little Valley transfers it to our dispatch office. And they talk to the people and you know, determine now if they're calling in that it's a fire, then that's, you know, that's a different situation. But the 911 calls are answered in Little Valley and transferred here. So.
I
Go
just
ahead,
would
Nikki.
never want to take away a 911 resource
Mhm.
for something non-emergency.
But you gotta remember though, we're not a large community. And what is a to some people, what they're calling about, to them, it is an emergency. And, you know, I mean, you take, okay, like, I think you mentioned there was a door open.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if I'm walking to my house and I got a door open, it shouldn't be open. To me, that's an emergency. There may be somebody inside my house, you know?
Well, and to be honest, I know for a fact it's an empty house.
Okay.
And I did. I
Well,
meant to
that's-
call and then I got home and I totally forgot about it.
Yeah, but see, that's even another concern. Who's in there? Why is the door open? You know, type of thing. So, and there's a lot of things that are in our community that our police department responds to. You know, like we've gone over this a couple of different times. Like I think I gave you the example of the older lady who was turned her thermostat up because, or turned it way down because she was lonely. So these are things that in a small community that we can do, that a larger community is not going to do this. So, Mickey, go ahead.
Yes, I was just hoping to move right along here on the same topic of technology. On page
Okay.
81, there's a little section with some questions regarding the body-worn cameras, which is newly instituted for the city of Olean. And I got to say, I am a fan of the current policies in place. Officers are not to stop recording at any time, and the redundancy, and there's a pool of available cameras, I think I saw. All good things, but I thought we might bring up the point, the main one here that interests me is, under what conditions should footage be accessible to officers, the public, or investigators? I thought that might be good to chime in on.
Okay. Well, you know, everything we do is you can do a FOIL request. And I'm going to let Mike or the chief weigh in on this. So,
Like you probably did you have a hand in writing that policy?
I did. I helped work on it. I helped work on it. The transparency. Okay, if let's say, Mickey, we arrest you, and you will have access to all that body camera footage, correct, Daryl? I mean, he's going to be afforded that. We have to turn that over.
Yes.
Now, let's say, you know, God forbid there was a domestic at my house. Where the officers come there, there's no arrest made. I don't think the general, and let's say I'm not a police officer, I'm just John Q. Public, and I'm having a domestic. I don't believe that you or anyone else has a right to view what happened inside my home if there wasn't an arrest made. I mean, that I don't see why the public should have access to that. Now, if there was an arrest made, you know, maybe, and of course, the defendant will have access to that. The police have access to it. But I mean, people being able to sit there and take a view into someone's home that don't have a reason to, I think that's an issue.
Daryl, would you weigh in on this?
So the discovery laws now require the prosecutor to present us with all of the material regarding the case, and that has resulted in a lot of body cam footage, a lot of actually, and this kind of transparency is excellent. It means more work for our office because we end up watching a DWI arrest from 4 different camera angles, often not seeing anything different on one angle. So these videos often can take an hour and a half. And then there could be an interrogation that we'll watch. But I think it's excellent. You know, I think this kind of transparency is good because we can have an honest assessment of whether something was wrong, and I can bring a meritorious defense and have a great discussion with my client about the situation. At the same time, law enforcement is protected because they won't be subject to false allegations. They'll have a video recording that would exonerate them of anything of that nature. So I think that kind of transparency is a really positive development, and the technology that exists today that allows that to occur is excellent. in terms of the issue Officer Marsfelter mentioned regarding the privacy interest of a person who has a law enforcement interaction, that's a very interesting question. One probably for the city attorney, and I really can't speak to that, but that's a really thoughtful, interesting issue about the public interest versus the privacy interest.
Kevin Doherty?
Yeah, so, I mean, this is kind of goes back to what we talked about last time, where certain FOIL requests should just be denied from the city attorney for incidents like that. But I think the FOIL process is very, very adequate for what we're doing. If I like to consider myself a smart business owner when I'm going to plan a job, whether it's a boiler install or it's running a new electrical service or whatever. I do my homework on the house. I'm always up to date on the new products and services. If you're a criminal and you're a smart one, you're probably doing your homework going, oh man, all these cops now have body footage. I should ask where their GPS locations are. I should ask this, I should ask that. If you're a smart criminal, you're also going to be using these same tools that a concerned public is using to get to benefit for yourself, right? Where are the cops today? Oh, they're in my neighborhood. I wonder if that GPS location is for the street crimes unit, things like that. So I can see why there would be an issue with releasing a lot of this data, not just the privacy from somebody's home, but for the safety of officers, not knowing that, hey, you also don't want to tip your hand to maybe an ongoing case or investigation. So, I mean, there's a lot of reason why you wouldn't release this, and a FOIL request would go through a city attorney who would then say, hey, listen, you're just broadly asking where all the cops are. It's not in particular for one case that maybe you were related to, or this, or that, or I think that's a very broad aspect that, that our FOIL requests actually currently handle. So.
Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Mr. Doherty, last week he's told us that the city attorney will deny a FOIL request. So therefore a FOIL request won't do nothing for us. Yes, there's the procedure for us to fill it out, but if all he's going to do is deny it, then what good is that?
The former city attorney would tell me that he would deny requests based on certain information when, like, I'm sure you guys have heard of the Facebook group, the Cop Watchers or whatever. They were asking for blanket information from the city, where all the cops are at any one time. Well, it wasn't specific enough to release broad information, and they would deny it and say, listen, if we're going to put cops' lives at risk, they can make a Supreme Court of the state of New York request that information from me, or from the city. If it was, hey, there was an incident at my brother-in-law's house, I'd like to FOIL the body camera footage on behalf of my brother-in-law or what have you. I mean, there's something you can kind of actually specifically state information, but you can't just blanketly say, I want the text messages of every city cell phone for the last 6 months, because a lot of that information could be privileged or have to do with ongoing court cases that might happen. A lot of things that would be privileged that you wouldn't need information on, and your FOIL request might be denied on that fact because it's just way too broad. You really have to be specific with a lot of these things. And I think the FOIL request process, if we actually had somebody to give a seminar on it to the public, I think would be a very beneficial thing. But I don't think they're just turning it down like, hey, we don't want to give you this information because, this or that. There's usually good reason for it. It's justifiable in a court of law. So
just let me explain how the FOIL requests are made at the city clerk's office, and then they're reviewed by the city clerk. They're reviewed by myself, and then if we feel that they don't meet within the law, then we can turn it down. And there is an appeal process. The appeal can be made to the city attorney, and then the city attorney will look at it. And if the city attorney feels that the request is not to be given, then you can file an Article 78 with the court to get the information. So there is processes in place. So,
real quick, Mayor, you might be able to answer this question. With the FOIL, is it because like the Captain Marshall, was saying that, if it's you that are trying to get the information, that's one thing. But somebody else that, that's a touchy situation. Do you know if it is next of kin or how far that goes? Like, what if something happened? What if I died in the incident? Is my next of kin allowed to get that information?
Anyone can foil. Anyone can foil, but it has to be a record that is kept in the what do they call it? The business as Daryl. What's the technical?
The ordinary course of business.
Yes, thank you. The ordinary course of business. Okay.
So I wouldn't have to file, right, Mayor? I wouldn't have to file for my own information. I would be privy to that camera footage, correct?
If you were arrested, like you said, now you get the information immediately.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's what I'm asking. If I was in an incident and I died in that incident, is my wife, is she entitled to get that? Just like I would be, or does she have to file a FOIL?
I'm not sure. We'll have to get an answer for that. But I think I think the discovery laws come in too on this. Am I right, Daryl?
Well, the discovery laws now mean that instead of us having to make a discovery demand outlining all the things we're looking for, the prosecution has an obligation to hand over that every element of the evidence within a certain time frame, and they must certify that they have given over the entire file, exculpatory information as well as inculpatory. And then we also have reciprocal obligations that come with the discovery reform. But I believe discovery reform is a very positive development in terms of getting to justice, which is really what we're all after. And then I guess I should also say, in forming a defense, we always have the capacity to issue subpoenas of our own. And if we feel like, for example, surveillance footage at a store is very important to a case, and we don't, and we're concerned that maybe law enforcement never collected that, or there's something there that was overlooked, then we can do a preservation notice and subpoena that record, and then use it to our, formulating our defense. A separate.
I wish Lori Lori was on here. The DA was on here. She could give us a better answer on that. But I'll try to get an answer for you on that. So I guess your question would be, as if God forbid, but if something happened to you, would your next of kin be entitled to? I mean, they could always foil.
Right, but we just got told that the lawyer, the city attorney, can deny a FOIL. If that happened to my wife, and I went and did a FOIL, and then the city attorney denied me, somebody else would have to do a FOIL.
Well, it's not as complicated as you think, but the only time that I think that, I mean, you've got some sensitive things. I mean, I guess if there was a situation where the body camera footage showed, and I'm just going to throw this out there, it comes into your home, you're having it comes into my home, and there may be some things that that you don't want everybody to see. There may be
bong on the coffee table. Bong on the coffee table.
No, I'm thinking more. No, I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking maybe something that may be indecent that you don't want the whole world to see, and I think that could be a case where that may be blocked out, or things like that. That could be blocked out. There's certain things that could be. What do we have? We along with the information, the equipment we purchased to give discovery. There was also in part of that is redacted.
It's redacted. Yeah, the ability to redact. I think.
Yeah, the ability to redact so that it can't be seen. But I'll try to get. I don't want to keep going. I'll try to get an answer for you on that.
There is criteria that control FOIL requests, and I presume every case is going to be fact sensitive in evaluating that, and there might be redactions. but that's there is a process, and it has to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
Yeah.
Like when we authorized that footage for what was it? There was something for the body cams that Chief Raleigh went over with us, which was the software. It actually had the ability to redact certain information. So if they had to present something that had like minors in it, right? There was something going on with minors and we didn't have permission to show their faces in court, or maybe for protection of witnesses, things like that were underage, we could redact some of the footage or portions of footage, just like blur faces, things like that were legally acceptable to protect, the privacy of young children and things like that. So, which was one of the examples that Chief Raleigh presented, which, I mean, things like that could happen. We walk into Bill's house and we, it's not a domestic, it's just him and Patty, we can redact the footage.
Okay. Barry, go ahead. Barry?
So, yeah, so two things. Captain Marsfelder, in the policy that you guys had drawn, is there already directives and guidelines on what is available and what's not available for viewing with the camera stuff? And then secondly, Mickey, is there something specific that you're looking for so we can kind of keep open dialogue on what it is that you're interested in? So I guess Captain Marsfelder.
Barry, without the policy in front of me, I couldn't, that's such a small, I don't want to say obscure, but fairly obscure from our usage of the cameras. I don't want to tell you something that's not true. Without that policy in front of me, I couldn't tell you.
If I could respond, Barry, I don't believe there is. That's why I asked. It's pretty well-rounded and simplified for the city, but I don't believe there is anything that governs the release of the footage. And the reason I brought it up is in keeping with the theme, how can your police department demonstrate a commitment to transparency in its interactions with the public? And when things go south in any interaction and the people know that officers are wearing body cam, they're going to ask for the footage. You see it spray painted on buildings all year long. You get the body cam footage, body cam footage, body cam footage. So having a system in place to at least make it easier or to attract people, maybe something on the city webpage or the OPD webpage to put in for a FOIA request or any other form that creates this sort of transparency we're talking about.
Okay.
Can I say something, Mayor, real quick?
Yeah, go right
I
ahead.
don't know if everybody had a chance or even bothers to watch the city council meetings. But yesterday, Councilman Crawford was saying that we need to brand only and put it and market it, put it and figure out like what we're going to be and to help people come here. Are we going to be, for millennials? Are we going to be for older people? What are we going to be? Figure that out. And then we knew how to get people here. Well, I would suggest that us on this panel look at that, think about that also, because it's nothing against our police department. We're trying to better. And with millennials and whoever looks at our city, and we want to grow our city, when they look at our city and they say, oh, these guys are taking the forward step. These guys are the ones that are doing things to move into the future. They're not out there blocking everything, doing all this stuff. That's what's going to make people come here. So I would just say, think about what Mr. Crawford said and apply that to this committee.
Vern, go ahead. Vernon.
I was just going to piggyback on that a little bit and just say that, I've helped recruit someone to this area that was a minority for a prestigious position. And one of the things when no one was around and it was just him and I, one of the first things he asked was, where are all the Black people? So when you get asked that, and I'm going to be honest with them, and I'm telling them, that there are very few. So when you think about that and you think about the rebranding effort, you know, in order to get more people to come to this area, in order to get more people interested, you know, we're going to look at the different, the generations, the millennials and so forth. But, you know, doing things to our website, doing things to bring in other people, you know, helping our police department, some of those things. And I know the police department has obviously has experienced issues with trying to bring in minorities or other women into the force. So those are things that we can look at to try to better our force, better our community, better our area, and maybe we can make this area more attractive to other people and help us along. Thanks.
Yeah, there again, like I said, that's exactly what the inclusion and diversion, not diversion, I'm sorry, inclusion committee is talking about, similar things there. So we're going to have some overlap on some of the things we're doing, plus what they're doing there too. So, Kevin?
To go off of Vernon, I mean, I don't think that the reason that there's not a lot of African Americans here, or there's not a lot of Asians or any other Puerto Ricans, any other minority group that you can think of is not because we're sitting at the gates of Olean with Klan suits on scaring them out. I really think that this is a warming community. It's just they haven't moved here. I mean, that's it. I mean, if all this committee moved to China right now, we would say, hey, where's all the African Americans and white people at, right? Like that's just kind of, I feel like that's a big portion of it. I mean, this area was founded by the, portions of it was by the railroad, and I mean, there was a lot of like German, Irish, like Italian, Polish families that moved here, and that's just kind of what happened. They all migrated out of New York City and they came this way. I mean, I don't think it's really a racist reason why the people of minority descent aren't here. It just, I don't know. Maybe that's my ignorance.
Yes, it is. I think you're missing out on a lot of things, and you left out the African Americans that were here.
Absolutely, it was.
So I'm gonna stop right there and just leave it at that. But I think all of us should try to take some time and watch some of the Olean footage on YouTube of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and look at those things and try to listen to what those guys are talking about. They're bringing up a lot of good information, and yeah, there was definitely more people here doing work in Olean than just those people that you named, Kevin. So that's it.
Well, I'm not saying that there wasn't. I mean, that's a percentage, right? Like that's why if minorities were the majority, they wouldn't be a minority community. I'm not trying to come across as ignorant here. I'm literally just, hey, if there was 10 different families in this area and only one family was African American, then I mean, you can't expect, you don't expect it to quadruple at the same time that, and I understand that back when the city was founded, I'm sure there was probably racial disparities, the same way that, the Italian community used to kind of badger other, people that weren't Italian, right? That was how a lot of people survived and, coming out of Ellis Island. So
seems to be awfully defensive though. We're not talking about the past. We're talking about the future.
Okay. Darren's been waiting to weigh in, and then Kenny will go to you. So Darren?
Well, I mean, I was just going to ignore and skip over that, but like Vern and Kenny jumped in. I mean, how can you? But I mean, Kevin, if you're going to make a statement like, I'm sure there was racial disparities back when Olean was founded, and then look where we're at now, we still don't have that many black people. There is a blaring red light for you flashing right there. Like, what is wrong? What's going on? Why have the numbers not gone up in a minority community with African Americans, Asians, Mexicans, Hispanics? Why have the numbers not gone up since back when Olean was founded and started until now? We're still a very small percentage. How does that work? So, I mean, but one of the things like Ty had mentioned and then Vern piggybacked on as far as developing the community in the right direction and bringing people here. I mean, you can't just hope to make changes and think people are just going to magically find out about Olean. You have to actively recruit. Like I've said in the very beginning, I'm about action. So, I mean, that would be something that I would like to see because I know I had spoken with someone previously in the past, and I asked them, isn't there supposed to be some type of a committee or a department within the city that goes out and almost like, I don't want to say lobby, but tries to bring corporations and businesses to the area to help grow the area? And he said, yeah, there is. And I said, well, what do they do? Because I haven't seen anything like, I mean, yeah, there are some businesses that start up, but the majority of Olean is mom and pop shops. And then you have Siemens, then you have Alcas, and then, you know, Cooper. And I mean, it's very small amount of larger businesses that provide a majority of jobs. So that's like one of those same things, is you have to go out and actually provide information and legitimacy to minorities to want to show them why they would want to move to this area. Like, not just, you know, hey, come move to Olean, you know, because we got stuff happening. You got to show them, like, you know, really what's going on and everything like that, which, like I had said before, you can make all the great steps in rebuilding Olean and doing these great things and whatnot, but people aren't just going to magically find out about it unless you're actively presenting the information.
Kenny?
I just want to say, Darren, that was very good. What I'd like to say is we're here trying to be proactive. We're trying to help the police department, help the city of Olean. We're not here trying to bash anything. And what you just said really threw things back on this whole committee. That's not even the direction we're looking to go. We're trying to go forward with progress. That's pretty much all I got to say.
Barry?
A couple of things, and I'm just going to throw this out there. I didn't live in this area for about 18 years, and having been in the military and moved around during that time, the lack of diversity was one of the things I was concerned about moving back here, because I thrive on that. And so coming back, and I never expected to be here as long as I have been now, but I thought, man, how do you live in a large city, and how do you live in these areas, especially on military installations with a vastly diverse population, then come back to an area where it is a rarity and people not embrace that. So how do we take that and piggyback that onto the transparency part that we're trying to address tonight with the police department? And part of that, I think, is going to be the recruiting. And so we're kind of going around in a circle here. And I think Vernon's right. We do all need to be watching the diversity and inclusion committees as well. So just throwing that out there.
Well, what can the public grab hold of as far as changes in transparencies and raising that confidence level that they're going to get a genuine experience and all that good stuff? What are the sorts of things that can be done to help boost that in terms of both, you know, police and technology? Some things to think about.
How can police department make its policies and procedures more transparent? I've heard so far, you know, website, you know, we've given you all access to the policies. Are those things that we want to publish? You know, what reasons would we not want to publish them? Thoughts? Michael?
I'm going to bounce off something Vernon said previously. I think there are some things, this board has been granted a level of trust with our policies. I don't know if it's beneficial for the public at large to have access to some of our policies, and definitely not some of our procedures. Some of them I'd be happy to sit down and talk with people about, but for my safety, for the chief's safety, for our department's safety, some of that stuff I'm not sure it's a great idea for some of the bad characters to have.
Kenny, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, I agree with Mike and Vern. I mean, the police department, you can't put anything tactical on the website, anything of that nature. That puts the officers in jeopardy. And that's something that's not something we can even bend on at all. There are a lot of communities that do have their policies on the websites. That would be something the captain would have to look at and or the chief would have to look at, Mike, and they would have to determine which ones they felt were safe enough to put on there and didn't expose any tactical issues.
Ty?
I fully agree with everything that's just been said. There is some things I would agree, like Mr. Wright said, there's some places that put their policies on there. I would think that that would be something that the chief and captain, whoever would come up with, if that's something that we felt should go on there. But for the most part, there's things in there that the community shouldn't be privileged to. It's just a safety concern, and it just doesn't make sense to do some of those things.
Vernon?
Yeah, I was just going to say, from a military perspective, I've always been anti people knowing everything. When I think back of you can go online right now and look up any of our F planes, any of our military equipment, and literally get all the information you need to know. And you can best believe China and Russia are doing the same thing. So I think when you come to something as local as this, if we're going to put something out there for the public, as far as these policies, it would be something sort of like the mission statement or the goals, or maybe their ability to do the ride along. I think that would be something that, would be interesting. But as far as some of the other procedures, they get a little too in depth. Even I was concerned with when we were getting assigned this and we initially talked about it. I was concerned with the fact that everyone would have access to this. I mean, I was not looking to get it, and I was surprised that we did, but I'm glad that we did. I read every last policy, and I learned a lot, but I don't think that's information that needs to be out there like that, no.
Well, I guess there's a assumed trust with this committee. And, that we decided that it would be in the best interest of moving this committee forward, that we did share the policies. So you had a better understanding of what, because part of this is, is what can the police department do better? So we had a lengthy conversation on this. And we felt that it was in the best interest of this committee to give you access to our policies. And there's some of them that are sensitive, and then I hope you maintain that sensitivity. But so, okay. Moving forward, we got about, I don't know, how much, what we got, about 6 minutes remaining? Is that what, somewhere in that area there? So I just want to go over what some of the take backs from tonight. Social worker, counselor, fuller part-time, that was a lengthy discussion there. I mean, it took up a quarter or a third of our meeting. So I think one thing would be good to do is maybe to bring on, is it Mary O'Leary? Is that it, Dr. Watkins? You're on mute.
Okay. Yes, her name is Mary O'Leary. She is the Director of Community Service or Mental Health.
So maybe it'd be worth our while to invite her to come and give her perspective to this committee and ask questions. I'll try to reach out to her and see if we can get her here to in the next week or so to give us a perspective on that and what services are provided. Now, Mike Marshfelder, you go to meetings with what group is it you go to on these issues?
I do. I meet with some mental health professionals. I believe it's called the High Service Utilizers Meeting. We do it every month, and for people with mental issues that we deal with frequently, if they sign a waiver, so we can discuss them at this meeting, so information can be exchanged solely within this meeting. We can't disclose that information to others. On how we can best do things for them to help them. We're not clinicians, we're not counselors were police officers. So we look to these people to see what we can do better for that community.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think I wrote down as under as number 12, a website, you know, posting monthly reports. Now this can not only be for police department, but I'll get you in a second, Barry. This can not be for the police department, but you know, as we were talking there, and I think Karen mentioned fire department also, and I think it would be good to see also, you know, DPW, what, you know, different things like that. I think it would be good, not only for the public to see the police stuff, but also several other things that we do in the city here. So Barry, go ahead.
Yeah, if we're talking about transparency of the police department and what they're doing, what Captain Marsfelder was just talking about, I'm sure that 99.9% of the community are not aware of those types of interfaces that the police officers are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if those things were on the website, you know, there's this one of the things that I hesitated about coming back to this area is there's some people that just thrive on the negativity because they're uninformed and they don't want to be informed. And if more of the public knew of what was going on that the police officers do every day with these 500 calls a month just during regular daytime, plus these other meetings are going to, I think it's going to shed a different light on how people perceive the police department. So maybe we can add that to the website or the transparency stuff.
Okay. Chief?
I'd just like to say, like, when we have, you know, 500-600 calls, you'd be surprised how few arrests actually come out of all of those calls, you know? So that is something good that we could share with you.
Yeah, it's a good idea. The next thing I wrote down was and I didn't put catchy, but a non-emergency number that people could call, there. And then I also wrote down that send copies of our case report, arrest report, and domestic incident report. Do we still have, if somebody's arrested for DWI, is there still that report that goes into the state? Is that done automatically from the breathalyzer? It used to be.
I'm not sure which report you're talking about.
DWI reports, is that a separate report now, or is that, doesn't the state want doesn't the results of the breathalyzer, aren't they transmitted right into the state?
Yeah, through our breath test device, it's automatically transmitted to the state.
Okay, so these are things that this committee may want to know a little, you know, just more of the inside workings of what goes on. So go ahead, Mike.
Speaking of what the mayor said, I work Tuesday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. If any of you want to talk to me about anything, you can call up here, you can stop up here, ask for Captain Marsfelder. I'd be more than happy to discuss things with you. That may not be appropriate to do, being that this is broadcast on YouTube. If you want to talk to me about something, anytime you call up, you ask for me, I'll make time for you.
Great, thank you.
That goes for me too. Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. Someone wants to meet with me, I would be happy to meet with anyone.
And I'm available 24/7, so.
Or just show up to his house.
Hey, you're more than welcome. So
I'm
If you're
available
working
on Sundays
24/7,
too.
You wanna,
you got my
if you're
bill
working
sign out.
24/7, you wanna work with us?
What's that?
Said if you're working 24/7, you wanna work with us, take some emergency calls?
Sure. I'll be happy to. So I have a lot of emergency calls just within my family, so that's so. And then one of the last things I want to I want to, as you all, everybody knows, Chief Raleigh is his last day is tomorrow. So he has done a great job with the department in the 5 years that he's been here. He's brought the department up to a level that we could be proud of. And I just want to wish him well. So So next, I'm going to catch up on Chief Richardson. Now, here's the problem. I say Chief Richardson, I get the fire chief and the police chief run to me. So I don't know. I'm going to have to start saying the police chief Robert Richardson and the fire chief Richardson. So, and strangely enough, they tell me they're not related. I don't know if that is that right, Ron?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. Maybe somewhere along the lines.
Okay. Anybody have any parting comments before we end up for tonight? We will have the next Thursday, and at 6:30. There has been I did receive a question on some of the people who have not have been absent at meetings. Like I think I said this in the beginning, I understand that people have busy schedules, and I am keeping a tally sheet on attendance, and it's not that bad. It's just things came up with some people tonight that they couldn't be here. So, but I think we've had some good attendance, and we've had some good conversation. I got to be truthful. I was a little skeptical going into this, but I'm happy. I think we have a good committee. We have good conversation, and everybody's is contributing. So I thank you all for that. So
I second that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys for your service.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you guys.
Thank you.
okay. So, well, hearing no more comments. Good night. I've got to get home. I've got about 10 minutes to get in my chair to take my hour's nap before I go to bed. So
Have a good night, folks.
Good
have
night.
a good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.
Everyone.
All right, good night.